Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my TBR check-in and book haul for the month of October. You might want to settle in for a long period of time because this one is going to be long. So, as you all know, October is my birthday month, and yeah, it was a great month for bringing in books to my house, but not so great for reading them and getting them off the TBR shelf. So let's just get to the numbers. They're not great, guys. So for the month of October, I read a total of 12 books, 8 of which were off my shelves. I brought in a total of 26 books. I did not unhaul any. So that leaves me with a plus 18 for the month of October, which brings my total of TBR books back up to 129. If you remember, we started the year at 120, so I'm still over by 9 books. It was really good that I got it down to 111 last month, but that is not going to be maintained. So I'm not surprised because in October it is my birthday, and I tend to, receive books for my birthday. I get gift cards or cash to purchase books, and everybody knows that my favorite thing to do is read, so that's just what people tend to gift me. And so I have a lot of books to share with you, and I am going to get started because it's going to take a while. So everybody was just so kind to me last month. So I want to start with the books that were gifted to me by BookTube friends. And the first 2 books you will have seen on my birthday vlog video, because they came from the lovely Kim at Middle of the Book March, who, when we got together for our meetup, gifted me with 2 books. And the first one was A Mumbai Murder Mystery by Miti Sharoff Shah, which says it's a completely unputdownable must-read crime mystery, which takes place in Mumbai, and I think is a turn-of-the-century type mystery, if I remember correctly. This is a book that was on my Goodreads want to read list, and Kim saw that there and kindly gifted it to me, and I am excited. I've been wanting to delve. I do really like mysteries that take place in countries other than the United States, and particularly historical mysteries, so really interested to check that one out. And then a book that I have not heard of, but sounds right up my alley. This is Abundance, Nature in Recovery by Karen Lloyd. And Kim knows how much I love to read nature nonfiction, so this is entirely in my wheelhouse. I love this cover of a photo of in the interior of the forest with all the mosses and the old growth trees and all that sort of thing. It is lovely, and so I am delighted to have another nature nonfiction to put on my TBR pile. Then from the lovely Patrice, who is one of my long-term friends here on BookTube and one of my favorite buddy readers, she gifted me The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum. And she read this book, I think, like a month or so ago, and she was telling me about it, and it sounded really great. So she gifted it to me so that I could get a chance to read it too. And this is about a young man. He's growing up Black in rural North Carolina, and he knows that his job opportunities are not particularly, wide open for him, but he would really like to study and play the violin. That's where his true heart's desire lies. So it's all about finding an old violin from one of his ancestors and what happens after that. So it sounds really interesting. Certainly not a topic that is normally anything that I read, but it sounds like something that I would really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to this. So I think December is Cloak and Dagger Christmas. Both of these would fill the prompt for that. So that's exciting. And then from the lovely Britta over at Britta Bowler, who is another one of my favorite people in the world and who's somebody who I buddy read with all the time, she gifted me with 2 books as well. And the first is this collection, Women on Nature, edited by Catherine Norby. And this is just I have all kinds of stuff falling out of this book. This is an anthology of women writers from the 14th to the 21st centuries who's talks about the natural world. And I love these sort of compilations because they not only can I read works from authors who I already know and love, but it introduces me to other authors that I might not have read before, and then I can find new favorite authors. And of course, writing nature nonfiction, again, my wheelhouse. Britta knows me very well, and another lovely cover. And then secondly, she bought me Maud Martha by Gwendolyn Brooks. This is a book that she had read, I think she read it in August for her 30 in 30 Days challenge, and it just sounded like such a wonderful book. This is a book about Maud Martha Brown, who's a little girl growing up on the south side of 1940s Chicago, and the dreams that she has for the future, but the realities of where she lives. So yeah, I love this cover. I love that it's a shorty. I love that it's another book about African-American lives in the early part of the 20th century, which is something that I've really been sort of reading a lot about in the past year. So excited to get a chance to check that one out. So those had all been gifted to me. And then my parents kindly gave me money to buy books for my birthday. And so while I was in Boston, I hit the bookstore and I went a little crazy. So these are the books that I purchased for myself while I was in Boston. First of all, I purchased this play, A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. This is a modern classic. I don't read a lot of plays, but this one, a couple of folks in the past few years on BookTube have read this, and the way that they talked about it made it sound really interesting to me. This was a play that was first produced in 1959, and this is, again, a story of a Chicago family dealing with generational clashes to civil rights and the women's movements. So, yeah, very much up my alley. And then I picked up a Becky Chambers book. I really enjoy Becky Chambers' writing, and I've read her Wayfarers series, the 3 books in that series, and then I started the Monk and Robots. There's 2 books in that so far, I think, and I've read the first one. And this one is a little short novella that, again, Britta read and said, Heidi, you need to get this one. You'll really love it. So, To Be Taught, If Fortunate, a novella by Becky Chambers, another science fiction book by an author that I really, really love. So again, really into the short books for lots of reasons this year. This book I purchased for myself, Woods Queer, Crafting a Sustainable Rural Life by Gretchen Legler. This is a memoir of a woman who moves to 80 acres in the backwoods of Maine with her partner, and then I think they are from the city, and they decide that they're going to try to live a sustainable lifestyle in the wilds of Maine. And I can't remember if I read a review in the newspaper or somehow locally heard about this book, and I was like, yeah, I need to read this because I really like to read nonfiction set in my home state. And also I really am interested in narratives about people who want to get back to the land and change an urban lifestyle to a rural lifestyle. This cover is just absolutely delightful with these illustrations of different animals that you would find in Maine, and also flowers and trees and whatnot. Lovely. The next book is by another author that I've read a book by him in the past and really enjoyed. This is The Fisherman and the Dragon, Fear, Greed, and a Fight for Justice on the Gulf Coast by Kirk Wallace Johnson, who wrote The Feather Thief, which I read and enjoyed a year ago. Very much enjoyed that book. He does really great sort of investigative journalism reporting, and this is all about the clash between commercial fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico on the Gulf Coast of the United States and the oil companies, and the disaster of the, I think this talks about the disaster of the, can't think of the oil rig that blew up, you know the one I mean, in the Gulf of Mexico and caused all the environmental destruction. So this book talks about the clash between fishermen and environmentalists and environmental disaster, and it also takes on issues having to do with race and the clashes between the different racial groups that are fishing in the Gulf of Mexico today. So yeah, really love Kurt Wallace Johnson and his writing. So looking forward to that. Another book of science nonfiction by another favorite author, An Immense World How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Yong. This is on my TBR for Nonfiction November. Really hoping to read this one this month. I read the introduction while I was still in Boston. I just love Ed Yong's writing. I watched his interview from the National Book Festival this year in the United States, and he does really great interviews. If you can find one of the interviews that he does on this book, you should watch it because he's so engaging in talking about the subject of how animal senses are different than human senses and how we are just now discovering how animals sense things in their world. So they have different, they can hear at different frequencies, they can see at different wavelengths of light, they are responsive to things that humans we can't even sense at all, like echolocation and other vibratory type communications, and that there's this whole world out there in which animals are communicating with each other and we're completely unaware of it. Fascinating topic. Ed Yong takes complex scientific ideas and writes them in a very clear and engaging way, and I highly recommend his book, I Contain Multitudes, which I read and loved. And then last but not least, I purchased for myself the new Stephen King novel. This is Fairy Tale. I am an immense lover of Stephen King's writing. I buy everything that he writes, and I have a whole Stephen King collection, so I was always going to purchase this book. It is a chunker, and it has this very, very cool cover. And I don't know when I will read it because I am 2 books behind, 1 book behind. And I always try to keep 1 book on my shelves unread until he releases his next one, because I am very much afraid that he's going to stop writing or pass away and I am not going to have any more new Stephen King to read. So yeah, I probably won't be getting to this one for quite a while. Okay, and then my sister, for my birthday in the last few years, has done this incredible thing of like going through her own bookshelves and giving me a stack of books that she thinks I will like, that she has either already read or she has picked up somewhere. And in this case, for this year, she actually went through my Goodreads want to read list and found a bunch of books for me that I had listed that she keeps in her classroom because she's an elementary school teacher as well. So the first 3 books from the stack from my sister I'm going to show you are books that are just on loan to me. These are not books that added to my TBR because they need to go back into her classroom. But I'm super excited to have them because I've really been wanting to read them. And the first one is Out of the Dust by Karen Hess. This is a novel in verse about the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, and is sort of like, it's a novel, but it's based on true story. So this one I've been wanting to get my hands on for a really long time. It won the Newbery Medal as well. So that one will be going back to her classroom. And then this one is also, another novel in verse. This is Starfish by Lisa Phipps. And this is about a young girl who is not thin and what it's like to live in the world as a young woman who is oversized, and how she herself is okay with it, but everyone around her does not seem to be okay with it, and how she deals with that. So yeah, just love the idea of this. Heard some really great reviews of it and can't wait to read it myself. And then Echo Mountain by Lauren Wolk. And this, I think, is historical fiction. Yes, this takes place in the Great Depression. A young girl, her family's forced to start over and leave their home in town and move out into the forest to try to survive. And I believe this is set in Maine as well. This is a stunning tale of resilience, persistence, and friendship across 3 generations of families set against the rough and ragged beauty of the mountain they call home. So yeah, I am very excited to get to this one. This one's been on my wish list for a really long time. And again, look at that cover. Such a cool cover. Okay, and then the rest of the books from my sister are books that did get added to my TBR. So there's this one, On This Date, From the Pilgrims to Today, Discovering America One Day at a Time by Carl M. Cannon. And this is a type of book that you read like 1 entry every day. So there's 365 entries. And for each day, January 1 through December 31, there's a historical moment described. It's like 1 page long or a page and a half at most. So for example, the very first one is January 1st, 1915. And this is a little news article about a woman who drives a car into New York City, and that was like a big scandal at the time. So yeah, this is something I think I'm going to start on January 1st and then just read one entry each day of the year and enjoy the book throughout the whole year. I love these kind of books that compile like little known historical tidbits in this sort of really brief but interesting way. So that will be fun. And then a book that I had tried to read in the past and borrowed it from the library and only read like a first maybe 15 or 20 pages and just didn't capture me. And so I sent it back to the library. Now I have my own copy of White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg, which is exactly what it says on the tin, you know, all about whites in America and, you know, how that group of people has the history of that group of people over 400 years. So we'll see, because, you know, it didn't capture me in the first few pages the last time I tried it, but, you know, it could have just been my mood at the time and I could really jump into this and zoom right through it. We'll see. Another book that I've really been wanting to read was on my wish list. This is Call Me American, The Extraordinary True Story of a Young Somali Immigrant, a memoir by Abdi Noor Iftin. And we have a large Somali population that has immigrated here. They've refugees that have come to America and have settled in the southern part of our state of Maine. And I've met a few of those people. And so I have a lot of interest in their story about how they arrived here and where they came from. And so this is this young man who, you know, what happened to him in Somali that led to his family needing to leave there, and how he ended up in the state of Maine, which is about as far from Somali as, you know, as far as like culture and climate and the whole works. So super interesting to think about what he has experienced in terms of cultural changes, climate changes, like all of that kind of stuff. Really been wanting to read this one. Thrilled to have it in my collection. A book that is a field guide and probably is not one that I will read cover to cover, but will flip through. This is Off the Beaten Path, A Guide to Unique Places in Maine, written by Wayne Curtis and revised and updated by Tom Seymour. And this is just, you know, exactly what you would expect. It is just a little field guide of unique places in Maine. It's written like this with lots of little facts and illustrations and did you knows and that sort of stuff. And I thought this would be fun to sort of dip in and out of and maybe find a few places, unknown places to me, that I could go and visit. And then lastly, from my sister, I had this novel, The Muse by Jessie Burton. And this is a book that takes place in 1967 about an immigrant from the Caribbean who is trying to make her way in London. And that is a time period that I'm very much interested in, especially after reading Small Island earlier this year. Very much interested in sort of the Windrush generation in Great Britain, the folks that immigrated to Great Britain from the Caribbean after World War II, and what they encountered in England and how they adapted and what it was like for them. And so this is a book that sort of is in that same general time period and topic area. So really interested in this one and glad to have it in the collection. Now this last stack, which is quite large, are all books that I purchased at 2 different library book sales. So the first 2 I purchased at a local library, has a little shed out back in which they keep books, and you can just go in there at any time. It's like an honor system type situation where you can go in and look through the books and you leave money in a little lockbox. And so I went in one day, I was having a rough day. It had been a rough day, and I was like, you know what, I need to go look at books. And so I went into their little bookshop and I looked at their books, and I found 2 that I wanted to bring home with me. And the first one is The Water Will Come, Rising Seas, Sinking Cities, and the Remaking of the Civilized World by Jeff Goodall. This has been on my wish list for a couple of years now. I read a review about this book. It sounded like just a Heidi book. This is about climate change and seawater rise. And I am particularly interested in how this impacts our infrastructure in coastal areas in the United States, areas like Miami or other low-lying cities that are already being impacted and will be severely impacted in the years to come as sea level continues to rise. So that one, excited to have in my collection. This one, I'm blaming this one on Anna, on the channel Anna Wallace Johnson, and because she read this one and or she just picked this one up, I think, and she was talking about it and how excited she was to have it. I think it was Anna. But I have read Jon Krakauer in the past and really have enjoyed his writing, his investigative journalism style. I think he does a really good job. His book Missoula was awesome. Definitely can recommend that. And this is a story of violent faith. On July 24th, 1984, a woman and her infant daughter were murdered by two brothers who believed they were ordered to kill by God. The roots of their crime lie deep in the history of an American religion practiced by millions. Yeah. So everything I've ever heard about this book makes me think that I would really find it fascinating, and sort of gives me vibes of Educated by Tara Westover, and some other sort of memoirs that have recently been popular about people who live in these sort of extreme, or live as part of these extreme communities, religious communities, and what that's like. So, and I really just like Jon Krakauer's writing style. So those were the two I got from my local bookshop. And then last Friday, as you will have seen in my last vlog, my mother and I traveled a couple hours away from where we live to a bigger library's book sale, and I got the mother load of books. So the first one is a book that I have already read, and so therefore does not count for the TBR, but is one that I just wanted to have for my collection. This is Ghetto Side, A True Story of Murder in America by Jill Leovy. And this is about a murder that happens, and then like the investigation around that and the greater story of living in this community. I think this is in Los Angeles. I think this takes place in Los Angeles. But it's sort of about urban violence and the history behind ghettoization of certain areas of cities and how that has all come to be, and sort of what that means for contemporary criminal investigations and that sort of thing. So yeah, this was an excellent book. I read this probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even longer ago. When was this published? I can't even remember. I think I borrowed it from the library. And so this was first published in 2015. So, and I read it from the library, and I've been wanting a copy. So I was pleased to pick that up. And then the rest of these do add to my TBR. And so the first one is a book by Clarice Lispector. This is The Hour of the Star, and it's translated by Benjamin Moser. And Clarice Lispector is, of course, a very famous author from South America. She was born in Ukraine, but then moved to Brazil in 1922, and then lived in Europe and the United States, but returned to Brazil like for the end of her life. And she's written tons of short stories in particular, and I do have her complete stories collection on my Kindle. But I think that this is also a great way to get into her writing is by reading one of her short novels. So pleased to have found that one. Then a book that was recommended to me by Britta, and that is The Shadow King by Maza Mengistu, I think it is. And this is set during Mussolini's 1935 invasion of Ethiopia, and it follows the women soldiers that had to fight in that particular conflict. And Britta sold me on this when she read it a while ago, and listening to her talk about it really interested me and made me think that this was a book that I would enjoy. And so when I saw this, I mean, this is a brand new copy. This has never, from what it looks like, I don't think it was ever opened. So couldn't resist that one. And then I grabbed Freshwater by Akwaeke Emeze, who is very popular author on BookTube, and I have never read any of their writing to this point. I know Doris loves Freshwater, and I want to try this author's writing, because everybody seems to, this is an author that everybody seems to be reading, and I just want to be reading their work as well. And again, never been cracked. This book's never been read. I picked up Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. I read Beloved for the second time back in February, but I have the only other book by Toni Morrison that I've read is The Bluest Eye, which I really thought that book was excellent. And I think that this is the other book that Britta really likes by Toni Morrison. And this is a story about Milkman, a man named Milkman. And this is the story of his life. And so I figured when I saw this, again, pristinely brand new copy of Song of Solomon, I was like, well, yeah, I'll grab that and I'll have that on my shelves. This is See What I Have Done by Sarah Schmidt. This was really popular on BookTube like 3 years ago or something. And this is the novelization of the story of Lizzie Borden, who very famously killed her mother and her stepfather, I think. No, her father. So it's 1892, and somebody has killed with an axe Andrew and Abby Borden in their home in Fall River, Massachusetts. So it's their father and her stepmother. And the shadow of suspicion falls on Lizzie Borden. And so, of course, I'm sure everybody knows the infamous nursery rhyme of, or not nursery rhyme, but rhyme of Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her father 50 whacks, and then when she was done, she gave somebody some more or whatever. I don't even remember how it goes anymore, but yeah, that's the Lizzie Borden. And when this was being talked about on BookTube, I thought it sounded amazing. So thrilled to have this, again, looking like a brand new copy of that book. Those are the paperbacks, and then the last three are hardcovers that I picked up at the same sale. I grabbed The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. I loved The Housekeeper and the Professor by Yoko Ogawa. So, and this book was quite popular on BookTube a few years ago. This was translated from the Japanese by Stephen Snyder, and I think this is like a sort of a dystopian type novel where things start disappearing, and the inhabitants of this island where all these things are disappearing, some people are oblivious to it, but then some people are sort of in fear of these so-called memory police who are committed to making sure that what has been disappeared stays forgotten. And so, yeah, I don't know. It just sounded like, sometimes I really like a dystopian, and I really liked The Housekeeper and the Professor, and I know this book is like totally different because Yoko Ogawa writes in a lot of different styles. I mean, tells a lot of different stories. Her stories are not like all the same, but I figured when you find a brand new hardcover of a book that you're interested in, you should grab it. Then I grabbed Utopia Avenue by David Mitchell because I'm trying to collect all of David Mitchell's books and read all of them, which I haven't been doing very good at that project, but this is his latest novel, and this is Utopia Avenue is a British rock band in the 1960s, and this is sort of their story. And I really love David Mitchell, and I need to get back on the reading of my David Mitchell books. So that hopefully will be an incentive to start getting through those books, because I have quite a collection at this point. And then last but not least, I have Kashodi by Salman Rushdie. This one is, I think, is inspired by Don Quixote, and I don't know if it's his most recent novel, but it was published not too long ago. Yeah, 2019 this came out. And I recently heard, I think it was Conrad at 7 Days at Sea talk about this book, and it brought it back to the forefront of my mind as something that I might find interesting. I have a hard time with magical realism, and so I know a lot of Salman Rushdie's fiction is sort of that in that vein, and so I'm really nervous about trying to read his more popular books like Midnight's Children and the Satanic Verses, because I know those ones are, but I thought just from the description of this one and the fact that I know the story of Don Quixote because I read that book, that this one might be more accessible to me. So when I saw this brand new hardcover, I grabbed it. So all those books from that library book sale, that last one, these books here, let's see if I can grab them all. Plus Ghetto Side, which I can't hold up because I don't have, my hands aren't big enough. I got for 20 bucks. Oh, I take that back because I actually bought one more book that I sent to Karen at Run Right Reads, the Rabbit Run book. I bought all of those for 20 bucks, brand new books. I mean, honestly, if I'd had more cash on me, I probably would have bought more because who can pass up books in that condition for that price? It was amazing. Anyway, the month of October was tremendous for me for books that I brought into my house. And now my only problem is I don't have enough time to read as much as I want because I want to read all of these books immediately, if not sooner. And all the books that I had already, the 111 books that I had already on my shelves, I want to read immediately as well. And so clearly there's not enough time in the day for me to get all the reading done that I want to get done. This is the problem, people. Anyway, that's the update on the TBR condition for the month of October. I know you guys have been dying to find out, and that's the damage that I did. And I'm not sorry about it. Not sorry a bit. I'll talk to you all later.